I don't know. Maybe it sounds weird now, but back then walking to Walmart alone didn't feel like a risk. I was 14. Yeah, but it wasn't far. Just a 10-minute walk from my neighborhood in Pine Hill. It was practically muscle memory at that point. I knew every crack in the sidewalk, every front yard I passed, even which houses had dogs that barked when you walked by. Walmart wasn't just about buying stuff. It was kind of freedom, independence. I didn't have a car, obviously, and West Ridge Mall, the one attached to the Walmart, had already started to die. All the good stores had closed down, like boarded up and forgotten. There were maybe 2 places left that didn't feel like they were going out of business. So yeah, I stuck with Walmart. Cheap, predictable, and quiet if you went late enough. Sometimes Zoe came with me. We'd joke about the clothes, try on sunglasses, take dumb pictures in the dressing room. But that night, I went alone. No reason in particular. I just felt like having some time to myself. I had my AirPods in, hoodie up, that low-light kind of night where everything looks washed out under the street lamps. I wasn't looking for anything fancy, maybe a top or some socks or whatever was on sale. I remember scrolling through my playlist, completely zoned out, like the world around me didn't exist. It felt safe, familiar, that kind of safe that makes you stop paying attention. I think about that a lot now. How routine can make you careless. How nothing feels like something until you're deep in it and too late to back out. That night was supposed to be boring. I really thought it would be. It's strange how your brain tunes certain things out: background music, clattering hangers, the hum of overhead lights. Walmart has this specific soundscape that makes everything feel a little dull around the edges. I was in the teen section, half scrolling through the tops, half scrolling through my music. That kind of mental fog where you're there, but not really there. I don't remember when I first saw him. It wasn't sudden, like a jump scare or anything. It was more like a quiet realization. I reached for something on the rack, and there he was, just too close. Like, not freak out close, but just enough that it felt off. At first, I figured he was looking at the same shelf. I mean, it's Walmart. People shop, people hover, but he didn't leave. He was still there when I moved one rack over. I noticed he wasn't holding anything. He wasn't browsing, just sort of lingering. I had one AirPod out by then, mostly because I was trying to be a little more alert, even if I didn't know why. He was saying something kind of casual, like we were already mid-conversation. I caught bits and pieces, something about my flannel shirt and how it looked like one his daughter used to wear, or maybe still does. I couldn't tell. He had this half smile, the kind that tries too hard to be friendly. I nodded, gave the polite yeah, okay body language, because I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to make something out of nothing. I hate that pressure to stay polite, even when something in your gut feels off. I didn't think much of it right then. Just a weird guy. Harmless, maybe. Probably. But something didn't sit right, even if I couldn't name it yet. At first I thought maybe that little comment about my shirt was going to be it. Just one of those awkward adult moments you shrug off. But he kept going, like full-on continuing the interaction as if we'd agreed to this, like we were in some kind of casual back and forth. I didn't even ask him anything. I didn't invite any of it. I kept trying to inch away, pretending to look at another shelf, but he followed. Not with his feet at first, just with his voice. He started asking things. Questions that came a little too quickly, a little too personally. Where I was from, what school I went to, if I came here often, that kind of thing. And I don't know, I answered some. I still don't get why. It's like I froze. Or maybe I thought if I just gave him short, normal answers, he'd lose interest and move on. But then he said something about my age. The way he said it stuck with me. I don't remember the exact words anymore, but it had this gross, knowing tone to it. Like it wasn't about conversation anymore. Like it had shifted into something else. And when I told him my name, my real name, which I wish I hadn't, his face did something. Like he liked it a little too much. That was when I switched gears, started making things up. I said I was visiting someone, that I wasn't from around there, but he didn't drop it. He tilted his head a bit and said something like he'd seen me here before. Not someone like me. Me. like he was sure, like maybe this wasn't some one-off passing thing. And that's when the pit in my stomach started forming. At first, I thought maybe that little comment about my shirt was going to be it, just one of those awkward adult moments you shrug off. But he kept going. Like full-on continuing the interaction, as if we'd agreed to this, like we were in some kind of casual back and forth. I didn't even ask him anything. I didn't invite any of it. I kept trying to inch away, pretending to look at another shelf, but he followed, not with his feet at first, just with his voice. He started asking things, questions that came a little too quickly, a little too personally, where I was from, what school I went to, if I came here often, that kind of thing. And I don't know, I answered some. I still don't get why. It's like I froze, or maybe I thought if I just gave him short, normal answers, he'd lose interest and move on. But then he said something about my age. The way he said it stuck with me. I don't remember the exact words anymore, but it had this gross, knowing tone to it. Like it wasn't about conversation anymore. Like it had shifted into something else. And when I told him my name, my real name, which I wish I hadn't, his face did something, like he liked it a little too much. That was when I switched gears, started making things up. I said I was visiting someone, that I wasn't from around there, but he didn't drop it. He tilted his head a bit, and said something like he'd seen me here before. Not someone like me, like he was sure, like maybe this wasn't some one-off passing thing. And that's when the pit in my stomach started forming. Bit and said something like he'd seen me here before. Not someone like me, like he was sure, like maybe this wasn't some one-off passing thing. And that's when the pit in my stomach started forming. There was this split second, I don't even know if I imagined it, where I thought someone else picked up on what was happening. I'd moved from the clothing section, mostly just trying to get some space between me and that man. I acted like I was browsing other aisles, drifting toward electronics, hoping he'd just get bored and disappear. But before I even got that far, I remember catching this glance. Another guy, probably not much older than me, maybe college-aged, was standing nearby. He looked at me, then at the man, then back at me. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just a quick shift in his expression, like he was clocking something, like he saw it too. I wasn't sure. Maybe he was just people watching. Maybe I was just hoping someone else was aware. But later, when I'd wandered over to electronics, trying to blend in near the phone cases, that same guy passed by again. He didn't stop or anything, didn't ask questions, but his face, there was something in it. Recognition, quiet concern. He didn't smile or wave, but it was like a silent question was hanging there. Are you okay? And I remember that moment hitting me harder than I expected, because up until then, I'd been second-guessing everything, wondering if I was just being paranoid or dramatic. That tiny gesture, that barely there expression, kind of snapped things into focus. Like, no, this isn't just in your head, someone else sees it too. He kept walking, and the man, still somewhere nearby, still not gone. But that small silent exchange, it stayed with me. It was the first time I started to realize, really realize, that this wasn't some normal awkward encounter. Something was off, and I wasn't imagining it. I kept trying to talk myself down from it. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, that people get weird in public spaces all the time, and it doesn't mean anything. But there was this gnawing feeling that wouldn't let up. That low, anxious thrum in my chest, like I was waiting for something to happen before it actually did. The man didn't follow me physically through the aisles anymore, not in a way that anyone would call obvious. But I knew he was still around. I'd glance sideways and catch him in my peripheral, still hanging by a rack he wasn't looking at, or just sort of pacing slowly nearby, still not holding anything, still watching. When I told him earlier I was just visiting, that I wasn't from here, he didn't let it go. He gave me this tight little smirk and said something about how he was sure he'd seen me before. Not like a maybe or a vague memory, like a fact, like he'd really paid attention. And the way he said it, it didn't sound like someone making conversation. It sounded like someone keeping track. That's what got me. That insistence, that weird pressure, like he was trying to catch me in a lie. And I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe it wasn't a lie, that maybe he had seen me before, and I just hadn't seen him. I didn't even remember what I had picked up, some random hoodie, I think. I just brought it to the checkout so I could have a reason to leave. I didn't even look the cashier in the eye. I took the side exit into the mall section without looking back. I hadn't finished shopping. I didn't care. I just wanted distance. Leaving the Walmart section should have felt like relief. I figured once I stepped into the mall I'd be able to breathe again. It's not like I had a plan or anywhere I needed to be. I just thought a change of scenery would shake the weird feeling off. I wandered past the empty food court and into that sad stretch of stores that barely had any business left. A few kiosks, some closed shutters, and too many quiet corners. They had already put up the holiday decorations, and I remember thinking how weird it looked, like bright lights and fake snow and jingly music echoing through a nearly dead mall. It didn't match anything I was feeling. It felt like everything around me was pretending things were okay while my stomach was still in knots. I tried to pretend too. Walked into a store just to browse, didn't even care what it was. I wasn't looking for anything, just space, a minute to reset. But when I came out and glanced down the main walkway, I saw him. He was sitting on a bench outside the store. Not moving, not on his phone, just sitting, like he'd been waiting. Like this was where he meant to end up, and I don't know how he got there so fast. Maybe he followed me the whole time and I didn't notice. Maybe he looped around another entrance. I keep replaying that part, trying to figure it out. All I know is when I saw him, just sitting there watching, like this was still some casual thing, I felt my whole chest tighten. Not in panic, exactly. Just that awful weighty feeling when something you were hoping wasn't real suddenly is. I didn't run. I just picked up the pace, kept my eyes forward like I was late for something, even though I wasn't going anywhere specific. I had my phone in my hand before I even realized it. I remember how my voice sounded when I called my mom, tight, shaky, like I was trying too hard to keep it together. I hated that. I didn't want to sound scared. I didn't want to be scared. She told me to find a store that had people in it, somewhere with lights, somewhere open. I remember ducking into one that looked bright enough, a place with racks close together and a few people browsing near the front. I pretended to shop again, tried to look normal. I kept thinking maybe that would be the end of it, that he'd see the crowd and just disappear. But then he showed up at the entrance, just standing there. He didn't come in. He didn't need to. He just stood near the doorway, like he belonged there. And I don't even know if anyone else noticed him at first. But I did. I could feel it, that pressure again, that slow, unbearable awareness that I hadn't shaken him. Then I heard him. My name, said low, barely audible, like he was trying to speak to me without anyone else hearing it. I froze. My stomach dropped, and I could feel this wave of something rising up, panic, maybe, or just pure disbelief. That's when I walked to the counter and told the girl working there that a man was following me. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, like I was reporting something I still didn't fully believe. But she believed me. So did a couple of people nearby. I didn't have to ask. One of them stepped forward. The man saw it, saw that people were watching now. And just like that, he left, calm, like none of it had happened. My mom showed up not long after, and I left with her. I said thank you to the people who helped, but even now, part of me still rewinds that moment, trying to figure out how close it really came to something worse. I don't think people really understand what it's like to work nights unless they've done it, especially at a place like Walmart. I was working the overnight shift at the Supercenter in Clearwater, big, open 24 hours at the time. Though I think they changed that policy later. It wasn't a glamorous gig, but I didn't have a choice. My daughter had to be at school by 8, picked up by 3, and I had to make rent somehow. Working nights meant I could still be there for her, even if it meant trading sleep for time. Most days I was a zombie. I'd clock out at 6 a.m. I'd drive home with my windows down just to stay awake, get her ready for school, drop her off, and maybe catch a nap before my second job. Honestly, I don't know how I got through that year. There's this kind of fog that settles in your brain when you haven't slept properly in weeks, maybe months. Your body moves, your mouth says the right words, but you're not really there. That's how I felt every night I pushed that U-boat cart down those fluorescent lit aisles. That night, I don't know, something was different. It wasn't anything obvious. The store looked the same. The routine was the same, but there was this weird edge to everything. It was colder than usual. My skin kept prickling for no reason. Maybe I was just overtired, more than usual. Or maybe I had this weird sixth sense about what was coming. Looking back, I keep thinking, did I miss something early on? Some red flag I brushed off because I was too tired to care. It's hard to say, but I do know this. Whatever was about to happen, it started on that night, and I was already running on empty. It must have been close to midnight when I saw him. I was in the cereal aisle, restocking boxes kind of on autopilot like always. Most nights were quiet by then. Just a few night owls grabbing snacks or folks coming in after late shifts. Nothing unusual. That's why I didn't think much of him at first. He walked past the aisle, but then a few seconds later he came back, just stopped there at the end, half stepping in like he wasn't sure what he wanted. There was something weird about that pause, like he was waiting for something, or someone. His backpack caught my eye before anything else. It looked heavy, overstuffed, like he was carrying his whole life in there. Not the kind of thing you'd bring for grocery shopping. He didn't have a cart or a basket either. Just stood there staring too long at the granola bars, like he forgot why he was there. I don't even remember getting a good look at his face. It's like my memory just fuzzes out every time I try to picture it. But I can still see the way he stood, arms kind of slack, head tilted slightly like he was listening for something. He asked where the bakery was. His voice was off, too slow maybe, or too casual. I pointed without saying much, just trying to move things along. He wandered off eventually, slow and kind of dragging one leg a little, like he didn't care who saw him. It was the way he moved that got under my skin. Not frantic, not rushed, just too comfortable, like he wasn't there to buy bread or cereal or anything else. Like he was just waiting for the right moment. I didn't know it then, but that wasn't the last time I'd see him that night. Not even close. I kept telling myself it was just coincidence. Maybe he was just browsing. Maybe he was the kind of guy who didn't know what he wanted and was aimlessly walking around. That happens, right? But it didn't feel that innocent. I'd finish up one aisle, wheel my U-boat around, and move to the next. And sure enough, a few minutes later, I'd catch a glimpse of him again. He wasn't holding anything. No basket, no cart, not even a box of cereal. Just that same heavy backpack slung over his shoulder like it never left him. And the weirdest thing was, he never made eye contact again. He'd just sort of drift by. Not right up close, not enough to cause a scene or make it obvious. Always a few steps away, always pretending to look at something nearby. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. I was tired, beyond tired, and my brain was probably just inventing patterns that weren't there. But something about it, it kept gnawing at me. I even made a point of heading to the far side of the store, way over in chips, just to lose him. It didn't make sense for him to follow me all the way over there, right? But sure enough, not even 10 minutes later, there he was again, just at the edge of the aisle. Not walking by this time, just standing, like he'd been waiting, like he knew I'd show up there. It stopped feeling like coincidence at that point. I don't know how to explain it, but I could feel the tension building, like I was being watched, even when I wasn't looking. Like every time I turned a corner, I might see him again, and I wasn't even halfway through my shift. I was deep into the chip aisle doing the usual, rotating the older bags to the front, checking dates, just keeping my head down. That repetitive motion was almost comforting. I hadn't seen him for a while, so I let myself start thinking maybe he'd left. Maybe I'd imagined how weird it all felt. Maybe I was just tired and jumping at shadows. Then I saw it, his reflection, right there in the freezer glass across the aisle. He wasn't moving. Just standing again. That same backpack slung low, the same empty hands, the same quiet presence that made the hair on my arms rise without warning. He didn't even speak right away, just hovered. And when he did start talking, I barely registered the words. Something about how I looked, about how he'd been noticing me. But it wasn't the words, it was the tone. That slow, too calm voice that made my skin crawl. I stayed polite. I always do. Smiled a little. Nodded here and there. Gave fake answers, fake name, fake hometown. Fake everything. Just kept the conversation surface level and short. I didn't want to make a scene, not when there was no one else around in that part of the store. I thought maybe if I acted like it didn't bother me, he'd lose interest. Eventually he walked off again. I didn't watch where he went. I didn't want to. But something in the way he moved, too slow, too smug, told me he wasn't done. He looked like someone who thought he was in control. And standing there with chip dust on my hands and this dull ache in my spine, I knew for sure, whatever this was, it wasn't just a strange shopper being awkward. It was something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Tina hadn't even been working there long. A few weeks, maybe. She was quiet, kept to herself mostly, always double-checking things like she was still afraid of messing up. That night, she'd been stalking a few aisles over. Nothing unusual. But somewhere in the middle of the shift, she started asking if anyone had seen her badge. At first, no one thought much of it. We all lose stuff, badges fall off, get left in the break room, caught on a box flap. It happens. But later, one of the front-end staff mentioned finding it, right near the vestibule, between the double doors leading out. That was weird enough. What really bothered me was what I overheard later. One of the guys in security talking to the night manager. Quiet, low voices, but I caught enough. They said the guy, the same one I'd seen creeping the aisles, had been on the footage, picking up Tina's badge, holding it, looking at it for a long time before dropping it again near the doors. I kept replaying that in my head. Why would someone do that? I mean, who even notices a name badge like that? Unless they're looking for one. Unless they think it could get them access somewhere. I started wondering, had he been trying to pass himself off as staff? Did he think he could blend in, maybe get into the employee areas without being stopped? It made me sick, honestly, thinking how easy it would be for someone like that to slip through the cracks. Especially at night when staffing is thin, and we're all half asleep, focused on boxes and shelves. And the worst part, no one talked about it after that. Just kind of moved on like it didn't happen. But I couldn't shake it. Still can't. I don't even remember the exact moment I decided to head to the break room. It was just instinct. My hands were shaking and I needed space, just somewhere to sit for a second and breathe without feeling like I was being watched. I figured he wouldn't follow me back there. It's for employees only. I figured I'd disappear into the ugly vinyl chairs, sip some warm tap water, wait it out, but he showed up. Just walked in like he belonged. Like he knew exactly where I'd gone. That was the part that really messed with me. How did he know? He wasn't shouting. He didn't even raise his voice. But he had this tightness about him, a kind of angry calm that felt worse than yelling. I couldn't follow what he was saying, my brain was already in flight mode, but I remember the look on his face, like he'd been humiliated somehow. Like I owed him something. Then he set that backpack on the table next to mine. Real casual, started to unzip it slowly, like he wanted me to see. And in that moment I just knew whatever was in there. I didn't want to be around to find out. It could have been anything. My whole body went cold. I bolted, pushed off the chair and ran. He tried to grab my arm, his hand just grazed my sleeve, but I slipped past him, heart hammering like I'd been sprinting for miles. I didn't stop, didn't look back until I hit the front end of the store. It was pure instinct. No thinking, just movement. Survival. I didn't even realize I was outside until the cold air hit me. I didn't feel my hands shaking until I was already in the car, door shut, engine running. Just sat there for a second, trying to get my breath back, trying to process what had just happened. I looked through the windshield, and that's when I saw him. He came out of the Walmart like he had all the time in the world, not rushing, not yelling, just looking around, scanning the lot like he expected me to be there waiting, like this was still part of his plan. I kept thinking about the bag. What was in it? Why bring something that heavy into a store just to walk around with it for hours? Why hover around someone stocking cereal? Why follow me into the break room? Nothing about it made sense. I called my supervisor, told him everything, or at least tried to. My voice was all over the place. He just kept saying I couldn't leave the store short-staffed, but that he'd review the footage and notify security, maybe even call the cops if he thought it was serious. He told me I had to come back the next night, and I did. I still don't know why. Maybe because I had rent to pay, maybe because I didn't want to look weak, or maybe because that's just what people like us do, push through even when everything feels wrong. But I kept thinking, what if the cameras missed something? What if no one took it seriously? What if this wasn't the first time he'd done something like this? I don't know what he wanted. I don't know what was in that bag. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. I didn't go into Walmart in Brookhaven thinking it was going to be my career or anything like that. It was never supposed to be long-term, just a patch job to cover rent while I got settled into this tiny apartment I barely furnished. You know how it goes, you take what you can get, and I needed something fast. But man, I underestimated how weird that place would feel. The schedule was chaos. No rhythm, no predictability. One week I'd have a bunch of late shifts, then randomly get slotted for mornings with no heads up. Some days I'd be stuck behind the register, scanning hundreds of items like a robot. Other days they'd throw me by the fitting rooms, or have me roaming around as some sort of general do-it-all associate. No clear role, no structure, just vibes. I tried not to let it get to me, kept my head down, clocked in, clocked out, repeat. But the energy in that store, it was off. There was this tension, like no one trusted anyone. The co-workers barely spoke to each other unless it was strictly work-related. Half the time I'd pass someone in the break room and they'd act like I wasn't even there. And the customers, I don't even know how to describe them without sounding like I'm making it up. Some of them acted like they were shopping in a dream, just wandering, silent, glassy-eyed. Others were loud, agitated, always looking for a reason to argue over a sticker price or an expired coupon. You'd look into their eyes and swear they weren't really seeing you. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I'd get out soon. But looking back, maybe I stayed just long enough for things to start going sideways. It was one of those dragging shifts. You know, the kind where time moves like syrup and your stomach won't shut up because you skipped lunch again. I was just doing my usual zoning shelves, picking up clothes off the floor, answering the same 3 questions over and over. Mind on autopilot. I didn't expect anything different about that day. Definitely didn't expect her. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Not like a tap, more like someone trying to get my attention without saying anything. I turned around, and there she was. Lena. It was like my brain stalled out for a second. I hadn't seen her in months. Not since everything between us blew up, and even then, it hadn't ended so much as it fizzled into chaos. The blocking, the messages, the voicemails. I thought I was done with all of it. Done with her. She didn't belong there. I mean that literally. She didn't live anywhere near Brookhaven. We didn't have friends in common anymore, and I never once said anything about working at Walmart. It's not like I posted it online or anything. I was careful about that. And yet, there she was, standing in front of me like it was the most casual thing in the world, smiling like we were still on speaking terms, like the whole messy past between us had just dissolved. I didn't know what to feel in that moment. Shock? Anger? Confusion? Probably all of it at once. My mind was racing, trying to connect dots that didn't want to line up. How did she find me? Why now? And more than anything, why did she look so happy to see me? I remember trying to play it cool, keep my tone neutral, my face unreadable. It was hard though. My pulse was doing its own thing and I could feel the heat rising in my neck. I just kept thinking, don't react, don't make this into something bigger than it needs to be. But in the back of my mind there was this itch I couldn't ignore. The question kept looping, how did she even know I worked here? I'd been careful. After the breakup I cut off everything. I blocked her on every app, scrubbed my socials, even changed my number. There wasn't a trail for her to follow. And yet here she was, standing right in front of me, smiling like nothing had happened, acting like she just happened to be shopping in this Walmart of all places, in a town she has zero ties to. I couldn't buy it. I started running through everyone we used to know, thinking maybe one of them slipped up, but even that didn't make sense. I hadn't spoken to any of them in forever, and last I heard, they'd all distanced themselves from her too. The more I thought about it, the less any of it made sense. and that's when the dread crept in. Because if she didn't find out through someone, then how was she watching me? Had she been tracking where I go? I didn't say any of that out loud, just swallowed it and nodded through the weird tension in the air. But inside I was unraveling, because if she'd gone this far, showing up unannounced, pretending like it was casual, what else had she already done that I hadn't noticed? What else was coming that I couldn't see yet? It was the next day. I was halfway through a shift, dead on my feet, when one of the assistant managers asked me to come to the back office for a minute. That kind of thing always messes with your nerves, even if you haven't done anything wrong. They sat me down and told me a customer had filed a formal complaint, said I was rude, dismissive, totally unprofessional. I remember just blinking at the screen while they read it out loud. I wasn't even mad at first, just confused. But then I heard the actual words in the complaint, not just the usual angry customer stuff. This felt pointed, like whoever wrote it knew me. There was a line in there about how I always looked bored and fake nice at work, something Lena used to say during our fights. Another part described how I tend to fidget with my sleeve when I'm nervous. No random shopper would have caught that. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just some annoyed stranger. This was personal. It had Lena's fingerprints all over it. I didn't say anything to the manager, just nodded along and promised to be more mindful. But inside I felt like the floor dropped out. She'd made it seem like running into me was a coincidence, a surprise, but now it felt like she'd been planning it, maybe even weeks ahead. I started wondering if she had scoped out my schedule somehow, if she'd been in the store more than once without me noticing. Was she trying to get me fired? Back me into a corner so I'd have to talk to her? I didn't know, still don't, but it sure as hell didn't feel random. It felt like a warning. It was one of those long, dead-end shifts, the kind where everything feels a little foggy by the time you clock out. I just wanted to get home, microwave something halfway edible, and zone out to a game until I passed out. That was the routine. Nothing fancy, just survival mode. When I pulled into the driveway, Derek's car was already there. Normal. He worked early shifts, so I figured he was in bed by then. The house was quiet, no lights on, that kind of comforting silence I usually appreciated. But something was off. I couldn't say what it was right away. Just this weird buzz in my chest, like something small was out of place, and my brain hadn't caught up to it yet. I put my hand on the front door handle, and it turned without resistance. Unlocked. I always lock it. Like, always, even if I'm just going to grab something from the car. Even if Derek forgets, I double check. It's muscle memory. Still, I told myself maybe he left it open. Maybe he forgot. Maybe. But then I stepped inside, and the house didn't feel right. It didn't feel occupied. It felt still, too still. That's when I noticed my bedroom door. Not wide open, not closed, just cracked. Just enough that you could barely see inside. Like it was left that way on purpose. Something in me knew right then. I went outside and checked under the planter where I kept the spare key. It wasn't there. I checked again and again, like maybe it fell. Maybe I was looking at the wrong spot. But no, it was gone. And I started thinking how many people even knew about that key. Only one name came to mind. I stepped back inside the house like I was sleepwalking. Not trying to be quiet, not out of caution. It was more like I couldn't fully believe what I was doing, like I'd fallen into some foggy version of my life and was just watching myself move through it. The air inside felt different, heavy. Still, I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that I'd been on edge all week, that work was bleeding into everything, messing with my nerves. But then I passed the kitchen. I don't even know why I looked, but my eyes went straight to the knife block. One of the larger knives was missing. I stood there, just staring at that empty slot. My brain wouldn't make the leap, wouldn't admit what it already knew. Maybe it was in the sink, I thought, or maybe Derek used it and didn't put it back. Maybe, but my stomach already knew. My skin knew. That cold crawl started moving across my back. My phone, my only lifeline, was still in my room, past the half-open door, the one I'd stared at earlier. I didn't think. I couldn't afford to think. I just moved. Fast. I ran to the hallway, grabbed the doorknob, and yanked the door shut. slammed it hard and held it there, hands shaking, and then I heard her. Not clearly, just the sound of someone shifting inside, breathing, a whimper. Someone was in there, and it wasn't supposed to be anyone. My heart was thudding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape through my ribs. Every nerve was on fire. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I only knew I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Derek called the cops while I held the door with every ounce of strength I had left. My arms were trembling, not from the effort, but from something deeper. Some kind of raw, bone-deep fear I hadn't felt before. I remember hearing her inside, moving, sobbing, saying something I couldn't quite make out. I didn't answer. I didn't say a word. The cops got there fast. They told me to back away, and I did. Silent, barely breathing, I stood there as they handled it. They told her to come out, told her to drop whatever she had. She did. They cuffed her and walked her out past me. But I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the floor. I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to risk reading into whatever expression she might have had. Regret, madness, something in between. They said it was second-degree burglary. They didn't need me to press charges. Her showing up uninvited with a knife and no explanation was enough. They took her away, and that was it. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept replaying everything over and over. Not just the night, but the last few weeks. Every little moment I brushed off. Every weird feeling I ignored. And the thing is, I still don't know what she wanted. Was she trying to talk? Confront me? Hurt me? I've played out every possibility, and none of them feel real. All I keep thinking is, what if I had gone to bed earlier that night? What if I didn't check the lock? What if I hadn't noticed that stupid missing key? I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I never do. And that's what scares me most.